Welcome to Deciphering Growth, the show that explores mental health from every angle. We bring you conversations with personal opinions, stories, and practical tips. We aim to break down the stigma and help you live your best life. So please sit back and let's dive in. Before we begin, we want to remind our listeners that this podcast represents the opinions of Tiffany Graves, Eric Stone, and the show's guests. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Please consult a healthcare professional for any medical questions. The views and opinions expressed are our own and do not represent those of our workplaces. Listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content does not establish a doctor-patient relationship.
Good morning.
We are back, and it is morning.
It is morning. Thank you all for joining us today. We are kind of getting back, I would say, Tiffany, to the roots of maybe I feel like we've talked about this concept a lot, but it is on trauma bonding. I know that I don't know about your algorithm, but mine, I feel like every few weeks this pops up on my TikTok, and then it's like some people spewing off like some hot takes about trauma bonding, and most of it's not accurate or helpful. So our goal is to not be that for anyone today. Not that there's not some good info on TikTok, but I know Tiffany and I've talked about this off mic. There's been lots of studies, like the New York Times looked at ADHD TikTok and like just looked at the most popular videos, and like half of it was correct and accurate according to experts, and then half of it was just kind of junk science kind of stuff. So not our goal today. But one of the things when we're talking about today is it's like why it's so hard to break those trauma bonds, how they can form, and how maybe someone could begin to heal some of those wounds. I will share just a trigger warning for our episode today. We will talk a little bit about a recovery from addiction, abusive relationships, and just exposure to trauma. Not, I would say, super graphically, but we will be discussing specific examples. So I don't want, if anyone's kind of not in a place listening today, to listen to that or join us in that discussion. Uh, please feel free to catch us next time. We want to make sure that no one's getting caught off guard with our discussion. Um, Tiffany, anything you would like to start us off with today?
I kind of just wanted to hit us with a good old one-liner in terms of like what we're talking about is trauma bond, and it's kind of that question of, have you ever felt stuck in a relationship that hurts, but leaving feels pretty close to impossible? And that's what we call a trauma bond. And it's a psychological attachment formed through cycles of abuse, intermittent reinforcement, and survival-based coping mechanisms.
Wow. I love that definition. I think one of the things that we talk about is that, emotional attachment can be formed through maybe one intense trauma experience, but also could be through cycles of abuse or intermittent reinforcement.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if anyone's had this, but we talk about this a lot. Like trauma has this different energy to it. So if someone starts to talk about a car accident that they were in, you almost will see people around you who have been through that start to change their reaction, whether they're being triggered or like joining in, like, oh yeah, that happened to me too, and I broke my foot, or people really tend to, it sounds strange, like, usually, like, want to share some of this energy in some way, not, like, want to talk about every detail, but there's something about this energy where if someone has gone through something, you may notice this in conversations, maybe anecdotally, there's this energy and people wanting to disclose. I will say I see this pretty much every day, any day where I'm running a substance use group, I will see this kind of play out. So there's been those traumas of surviving addiction, surviving maybe incarceration, maybe even going through multiple stages of treatment, some of that treatment being good, some of it not being so good. And you can see people just starting to bond. So that's a lighter level of what we're kind of discussing. But maybe a question for you, Tiffany, is how does somebody maybe go from these initial kind of what I'm talking about right now, lighter conversational trauma bonds to maybe something that's like a little less healthy, like maybe a little more dysfunctional for them?
Mm. What exactly do you mean?
Well, so we're talking a lot about, hey, there are things that are healthy or unhealthy that can show up in relationships. So I guess how would someone maybe know, okay, this is kind of shifting into that range?
So kind of looking at like the unhealthy part.
Yeah, how does that start to develop for people?
Yeah. So, ooh, you said develop. Now my brain is like, do we do the neuroscience or do we do the symptoms?
We're
so
getting really good where I know where you want to go, so I'm just teeing you up for it.
yeah, so a lot of signs of trauma bond have a lot of neuroscience behind them because it's not just a bond that's rooted in fear and love and confusion. It's also a chemical dependency that can develop in the brain. Um, So what that can look like is your amygdala can become hyper alert, which just means it's constantly scanning for danger, and your prefrontal cortex, which is your decision making and logic system, gets hijacked by that survival system, which then means you have a spike in stress hormones, and so intermittent abuse then triggers that stress hormone release and adrenaline. When moments of kindness occur, the brain releases the oxytocin, the feel good, the dopamine, and other endorphins. And then it can be followed by that intermittent abuse trigger, which then releases cortisol, stress, and adrenaline. And that cycle overall reinforces the highs, air quotes here, of reconciliation and deepens the emotional dependence like an addiction cycle because your brain is looking for those little feel good moments. Um, it's very similar to substance abuse in that the brain then craves the dopamine release and serotonin and other endorphins, like after those periods of stress. So, whether it's intentional or not, trauma bonds mirror intermittent reinforcement schedules that have been seen in gambling or addiction psychology, which are neurologically some of the most difficult cycles to break. The other thing is it affects your memory. So our hippocampus stores memories of both danger and relief, which can lead to distorted associations. They hurt me, but they also love me kind of thought processes. And chronic abuse can dull your brain's natural fear response, which can kind of create that learned helplessness and numbing. Um, I can't remember the name of the research article. It was not an ethical one, but it was done a long time ago where they put dogs in cages and they would shock the floor of the cage. So much so so there was two cages. One they both had like shocked floors. First part of the experiment, the dog could like jump from cage to cage to escape the shock. The second time, they shocked both floors, and the dog learned like there's no point in me moving. I'm just gonna get shocked. So in the third round, after the dog had learned that, they turned off one of the floors and the dog just sat there, accepted getting shocked because it had learned that like there's no matter what I do, it's still gonna cause pain. And that's kind of similar to what happens in one of these trauma bonds abusive cycles. Is like you learn that no matter what you do, it's gonna be painful. So you kind of just like settle in and accept it.
Wow. How would you maybe say practically? I love the neuroscience, Tiffany. Like, what would it maybe look like for some of this to be like accepting some of the maybe dysfunctions of a relationship or maybe the pains of a relationship?
Yeah. So some of the signs kind of we look for is you feel stuck, but you don't know why. You find yourself defending harmful behavior. Sometimes you get, well, they love me because of X, Y, and Z. You feel guilt or anxiety at the idea of leaving. There's a pretty consistent pattern of breaking up and reconciling, often after apologies, a lot of love bombing tends to happen. Um, you make excuses for them or others, even when their behavior is objectively harmful. You feel addicted to the emotional highs and devastated by the lows. Your sense of self-worth is shrinking or almost non-existent, and you are highly dependent on that person's approval of yourself. It's kind of some of the big ones that we look for. I mean, people can be extremely anxious, they can be extremely depressed. Some people, depending on the type of situation, can have PTSD from these types of relationships.
And I mean, I'll give a definition of, well, maybe love bombing, just a working one where it's, maybe a new relationship or after an exposure to abuse or an abusive reaction, someone's spending, extra money, extra time, maybe going out of their way. You're getting nice gifts, nice meals, nice dinners, just so many comments. And it's like the bombing portion, to me as a counselor is it's very overwhelming. Like it's like this huge surge. It really feeds into this, like, this is what I'm wanting type of feeling. This is what I deserve. And then it can kind of switch on a dime. So I don't want to put all of the questions on you today, Tiffany, but like, what would you maybe add for just a working definition of what maybe love bombing is?
Uh, I see, I kind of view I know it has like a specific definition, but I also view it as a spectrum. The
I,
most
I love it.
common example that like comes to mind for me that I use with people is like it's like if someone like yelled at you, screamed at you, told you you're worthless. Maybe they like didn't punch you, but kind of roughhoused you, and then they brought you flowers and they're like, "I'm so sorry." That's kind of an example of love bombing in that cycle of just it's all about you kind of thing, and it just makes you like it's such a drastic change from what happened where your brain is like, "Oh, this feels really good. I like this. I want to stay in this." When you're first meeting someone, it can look a little different. It can be like excessive gifts. It can be excessive validation. It can be like everything like seems normal and great and like, oh my gosh, we're doing all these things and they're buying all these things for me and they're taking care of me, and then it usually starts to slowly shift. And that love bombing is usually kind of that like hook, line, and sinker that sometimes these types of individuals that get in these abusive cycles will use to kind of catch, quote unquote, catch their partners. And then once you're in the cycle, it can be really hard, one, to realize you're in a cycle, and then two, to get out of that cycle.
Wow. I really love all the practical advice. I really do. Um, I feel like I feel like we're on the same kind of page with a lot of this. I mean, one of the other things I just think it's worth maybe mentioning is just like this idea of love maybe being associated or connected to maybe the pain or instability. I mean, I even could think of, if we just pick like a rom-com from the last few years, like Anything But You. Like there's this very unstable like relationship playing out with the characters where they're kind of almost bullying each other, mean to each other. I mean, it is a funny movie. I would say I think it's funny in some pieces. And also you do, if you just describe the dynamic of, oh well, I'm constantly teased or mistakes are thrown in my face, that could very much not be a healthy dynamic for a lot of people. So I also think if we talk about, one of the questions as a couples therapist I ask in the screening is like, how was love shown around you growing up? And we get messages from that. So truly, like, we may not even do anything wrong or bad ourselves, or even just anything that's not less than great. And we can literally, without choosing, like, have this view of what love is, and then think that love bombing is just the way relationships are, because that's how every relationship I've seen in my town has played out.
Hmm. Yeah, it for sure can be like something that is unintentionally learned as well. Like there is many a times where people on both sides are in a trauma bonded situation, and they might, like, neither partner is aware of it. Because, like, for one partner, it was normal. That was a type of love they received and was a type of love they're giving. Doesn't make it okay, but sometimes that does happen.
I love that. I really love just the function of it. Tiffany, is it okay if we go in maybe to signs of like maybe common signs to look out for a trauma bond, or is there anything you want to maybe get into before we shift gears?
No, I mean, I think that we can for sure get into the signs.
Okay. So one of the things I even just talk with my clients about, being honest, is just common signs of maybe trauma bonding could be feeling loyal to someone who consistently hurts you. So talking about someone who's maybe cheating on you, someone who is maybe threatening violence or is acting violence, and I would just maybe throw out that someone even just like throwing a punch. Oh my goodness, I almost fell over out of my chair because I didn't sip enough coffee. That's gonna be in the recording. Uh, that was scary. But just someone who is even just pretending to hit someone, that is still domestic violence. And maybe one other common sign I throw out is just feeling like you have to make excuses. Like, oh, well, I did say the wrong thing, or oh, well, I did embarrass them, or oh, like they have had a really hard week. That's just how this is. They do really important work. Things like this, whatever it would be, like just really making excuses for someone's bad behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can be very, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Be very convoluted when you're looking for um, signs. Sometimes the signs can mimic other things as well.
Yeah, feeling unable to leave even when you maybe recognize the harm in the relationship or the dysfunction. So, maybe recognizing, wow, this person is not safe for my recovery. They're not safe for my kids. They're not safe for me, and still not feeling like you can get out of that situation. Becoming isolated from others who express concern. So maybe someone says, oh, hey, like, I don't think they treat you right. They don't treat you well. Well, then magically maybe that person has issues with that friend down. They're like, oh, well, they said this to me or they did this. I will say, Tiffany, a lot of my therapist friends, and I know our colleagues, we have this happen to us. So maybe we will address a behavior or a dysfunction or call a few things out, hopefully with some good levels of kindness. But we can also often be kind of well, that therapist is a jerk, or, they don't know what they're saying or talking. Now, there are certainly therapists who are jerks, not trying to throw shade. So, like, that could be the case. So, don't get me wrong. But this happens all the time. It literally happens, I think, every day to a therapist. Even just in Cincinnati, like someone is throwing us under the bus because they don't like what has been said, or we are taking the blame.
Yeah, yeah. I have to be being human for a minute. I've definitely crossed over into the icky zone of being like, man, that person is just doing something that's not smart. Um, it can be hard sometimes though. It's like even within your own profession to not want to call out like behaviors that are just unhealthy or inappropriate or like cycles or patterns that like don't make sense. Um, Despite the fact that like we're also supposed to make sure we're being remaining non-judgmental in a way that is helpful and productive.
I will also throw out, it's a term we've talked about, I know, on this podcast, but gaslighting. So, doubting your own perception, feeling like you're the problem. So, maybe it's, hey, you cheated on me. Well, did I? Like, I don't know. Like, I stay out till 5 because I just really get good thinking in. Or, I didn't flinch. Like, I just, my hands bad. I mean, I don't know about you. I've heard a lot of things. Heard a lot of things from people, and that that really sticks with it. Even if you sometimes even we know that someone is lying to us, but we just aren't able to like admit that sometimes. Very complicated. So one thing we just want to be trauma informed is that we are not blaming any survivors of domestic violence in any form or fashion. If you are listening and you are in a situation that would be labeled as domestic violence and you're not sure where to go, I just want to make a plug for Women Helping Women. They are a wonderful nonprofit in Cincinnati. They have a 24/7 hotline. You can call anonymous, get resources. They have legal support, counselor support, crisis support. They're amazing, and I just want to give them a shout out that they also tend to have on the hotline fellow survivors who have been in those situations, working and supporting fellow survivors. So if you are listening today and you're like, "Wow, that's me. I'm in that situation," that's a wonderful organization to call. Genuinely. So I just want to make a plug for a really wonderful organization that's really doing it right every single day. They're one of the best.
They are. They really are a wonderful resource. But yeah, it's a really important note to plug that, like, it's not your fault. I think that's the one kind of learned brain pattern that I've come across that's really hard to change is people have like gaslit themselves on top of their partners, where they're like,
Well,
"Oh, it is my fault. Like I did X, Y, and Z," and I'm like, "But if your best friend did X, Y, and Z, would you treat them the same way?" And they're like, "No, because of this," and I'm like, it can be really frustrating and like heartbreaking to see someone has essentially convinced themselves they're deserving of some form of abuse.
I also think if you have attached to people growing up in your orbit and they modeled this, okay, well, yeah, it is your fault. It is your fault that your dad relapsed. I've had clients, believe it or not, been told that straight up by like the other caretaker, not even the person who's relapsed. Like, it's your fault if you got A's, or well, if you didn't make them mad. And obviously, I hope we can all agree on this. Like, that's not true. Like, no child is responsible for their parents' recovery. I think, I hope everyone would agree with that. I don't know. I guess there's maybe someone that's like, oh no, that's not true. But I mean, generally, like, there's just a lot of mental gymnastics that some people do every day to come up with a reason why it's not their fault or it's not their responsibility. Um,
Or vice versa,
yeah,
where they find ways to make it their fault.
yeah, I that's a good point. I mean, especially if, it's a survival instinct, it's like, oh, well, if I can keep everybody around me happy, well, hey, then I don't get hurt physically, or hey, I don't have to have my whole weekend be spent hearing yelling or things breaking, or have the day I want, or not have more of this pain. Uh, so again, I think we have to really come in with non-judgmental eyes, and maybe just another shameless plug, if I may, like there is not a single person in a domestic violence situation that needs told what to do. That's part of the problem they're already experiencing. So if you are supporting a survivor, I would just maybe please ask to, don't need to keep telling them. They ask you, sure, but if you're, no one really wants unsolicited advice. Even in therapy, I don't know about you. I'm not just giving, hey, you should do this. Like every once in a while, I'll be like, hey, like I'm a little concerned, like, how about this? But I mean, no one really wants to just be told, oh, do this, do this, do that,
Mhm.
do this. I don't know. I have not experienced that. And I know when I was in therapy, that's not what I was looking for, just being upfront.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to be told like, "Oh, you need to leave a situation." Like it's at least from the way I approach it is more of like, "Hey, these are the things I'm noticing that's happening. Like, are you okay with this?" And if the person is like, "Yeah, that's fine," I'm like, "Cool. Like that's where we're sit. Like this is ultimately their choice, their decision. Um, and our job is to just sit with them and help them view different perspectives until maybe they reach a space where they're like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Maybe they don't. It's while we can label things as healthy and unhealthy, um, we don't have the power to tell. Well, I mean, we do have the power. That's not the right wording. We shouldn't abuse our power and tell people what they can and can't do with their life.
Hmm, I like that.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like, long-term impacts of some of these trauma bonds is just, leaded to repeated patterns in future relationships, whether that's friendships, romantic, undermining trust and self, which, those are very big things that can show up, I mean, in so many ways. I mean, I mean, we could kind of go on and on a little bit with some of the ways that could show up for someone.
hmm We could. We could. We could go into wonderful inner child and attachment work, but that's a whole nother topic.
It is. I guess, Tiffany, I've kind of covered a lot of what I want to say. I guess the only other piece I would just say is just the first step is awareness and naming a pattern. So labeling, hey, that's dysfunctional. That's love bombing. That's not safe. That's not love. That's not healthy. That's not kindness.
hmm
Just listening to this or talking to a friend, building a support system, finding your empowerment, finding your sense of self, your agency. That's a place to start. And then I wanted to say that that takes time. And I got no judgment for anybody trying to work through that. So that was just the last thing, Tiffany, I wanted to just make sure I said to people is just that they're not bringing that
hmm
judgment in for themselves.
Yeah, and time is the biggest factor usually in these situations because, like, a person has to learn to regulate their nervous system. They have to be in a space to be able to take that psychoeducation. They have to be able to start working on consistency over chaos, limiting contact. And then when they really get into a space where they're away from the abuser, then they can start doing like harder, deeper work, like in therapy or in a support group or with supportive people to really look at like what happened in the situation. It's a really complex situation. It always it's this might be a weird metaphor, but it's like sticking a person who's always drove an automatic car in a stick car in the middle of nowhere going, find your way home. Like it's going to be really hard to do at first.
Well, I appreciate the chance to discuss some of this, Tiffany. I know it's a very heavy topic. And the last thing for me today is if you are listening and you're feeling some of that heaviness, maybe you're not impacted by this personally, but you know of someone who has been, or just the topic matter is kind of heavy. I just invite everyone to take that time to kind of transition after this space, go ground, go walk, maybe
Mhm.
some music, but just trying to do some things to re-regulate. It's a heavy topic, even for us, Tiffany and I, to be discussing. And with that, I hope that everyone found this helpful. And if they have questions, please feel free to follow up with us.
Yeah, and I just want to normalize that shame and guilt and confusion that individuals usually feel that are in this situation. I hate using the word, but it is pretty normal. Those are really heavy, hard emotions to deal with. Um, so please, like, if you're in a space, seek support. I just want to also reinforce that trauma bonding is a brain-based survival response. It's not a personality or character flaw. And then we always invite you to share your stories or explore more in therapy if you're willing and ready. Otherwise, you can catch more of our stuff on our Patreon and other major listening platforms, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Deciphering Growth. We hope you found our conversation helpful and insightful. Subscribe to our podcast for more episodes and check out our Patreon for more content. Don't hesitate to contact us on social media if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.